Please welcome to the stage Andrew Warner, Senior Vice President and Group Publisher of Federal Brands at GovExec, and Kevin Mulligan, the DoD Policy Lead for Google.
I was going to introduce you, but I think Patrick just did that for you. So you are Kevin Mulligan, DoD Policy Lead for Google Cloud. Thank you for being here. I'm Andrew Warner, Publisher of Federal Brands for GovExec. So before we get in, maybe
let me put a qualifier on that.
Say to Patrick,
let me put a qualifier on that comment. So I'm a retired Marine. I was an F-18 pilot, and the warnings and cautions that were delivered to you as an aviator, like engine fire left, was given to you in this very calm way by a female voice. And the idea, the Safety Center thought that aviators would be more responsive to a female voice than a male voice. And they also thought that if they put a British accent on it, that you'd actually believe it more. And so those were some of the things they were considering as they made that. Anyway,
I'm sure if Patrick were writing that up, he included far more detail. You've already given a little background on your history with DoD. What do you do with Google now?
So I think the main reason that I'm up here, and the reason that I think you all will be interested in this particular conversation, is that Google's made a long-term investment that is now really coming to bear and to bear fruit. I think if you look at Google's history, we're still only a 25-year-old company. We're still fairly young when you think about the life cycle of a company. And Google's made some really incredible investments that are now being realized for their value to the Department of Defense. So, Google's mission was to make the world's information readily available and useful, to kind of democratize people's ability to access and utilize information globally. And to do that, they needed to put in the infrastructure globally to be able to do that, right? So Google is investing heavily in subsea fiber optic cables, for example. We own those cables. We're not renting those out. Whereas others may be leveraging telecommunications companies for their infrastructure, Google has elected to own it. And so we do long-haul data transmission. We call it cold potato, where others will use a hot potato method, get your workload off of their network, get it into a third party's, and have them do the transmission of your data. We like to hold on to that data. We can hold on to the encryption end-to-end. Encrypt it at rest, encrypt it in transit, keep it within our network, within our boundary, and not expose it to those vulnerabilities that you have through interconnects. That's extremely powerful. When you look at our investment in data centers, we're one of the largest manufacturers of hardware that we don't actually sell. We invest, we put it back into our data centers. That is so that we can control the performance of those data centers in a standardized way globally. And so why is that important to the Department of Defense? Well, now the Department of Defense is seeing that Google has invested in certifying that global commercial cloud that manages roughly a third of the world's internet traffic on fiber that we own in data centers that we've built. We've certified that for use by the Department of Defense. We have impact level 5 for our commercial cloud. That's profound when you're thinking about the evolution of cloud computing for the Department of Defense. Originally, the Department of Defense wanted an air-gapped, physically separated government cloud. And that was built for them to spec, right? It was exactly what they asked for. They got exactly what they wanted. But what that effectively is a castle with a moat around it. It has limited scale. It's not flexible. It's not adaptable. It has limited bandwidth in and out. I think people who are overseas, my buddy just gave up command of an air station overseas, and he said if he wanted to anticipate what it was like to get hacked by the Chinese, he just needed to log into his computer every day, and he would get that experience, right? So what Google has done, which is really profound, is kind of to see where the future requirements of the Department of Defense are going and to certify our cloud to enable that. So when you think about the data required to run all the AI workloads that we're talking about, you really need the speed, scale, flexibility, adaptability of Google's commercial cloud compute capacity to drive those AI models to be successful.
it's interesting. So much of what we just heard from Secretary Holliday and the rest of the day will be about the future, but to hear that sort of in Google's conception and Google Cloud's conception, it was really built for the future is similar to DoD and their legacy of innovation. Anything you want to add on the sort of origins of Google, or can we shift towards the future and AI?
No, I mean, I think as you look at the history of Google, obviously, it's easy to look up. We started from a National Science Foundation grant. We've been tied to the Department of Defense really from the beginning. But I think the broader awareness of Google's relationship with the Department of Defense, I think, is largely run underneath people's general observations. So now, with the launch of Google Public Sector, you have a part of Google that is intentionally designed and constructed to support the DoD mission. Whether you're talking about holding our own security clearances, some of the basic administrative functions, just the need to know. You now have a dedicated need to know organization that's been structured to support the Department of Defense. And you see, as Google Cloud certified at IL5, we're now intentionally working with and working with our DoD partners at DISA to show a fundamentally different way of how you certify cloud services, cloud service providers, and cloud service offerings. And I think that we're starting to see globally, as Google Public Sector starts to engage more broadly with some of our partner countries, we start to see the importance of sharing information, right? You think about AUKUS or Five Eyes or NATO, the EU. It's important. As a former DoD member, everything that we did was joint. We've been working in a joint world in every conflict the United States has ever engaged in. And so the sharing of information among our partner countries is incredibly important. How you respect a partner country's data, but still enable the sharing and collaboration that's required to conduct those joint operations is really important. So when you think about maybe the Indo-PACOM AOR and some of the allies that are there and the sensors and data that is resident inside of their country, they don't necessarily want you to know their sources and methods. I had an Australian exchange pilot in my squadron, and he knew that I knew that he knew the secret that I wasn't allowed to tell him that I knew that he knew that he knew, right? That back and forth. So we have this relationship with these countries where we know that they have certain capabilities, and yet we respect the fact that they don't necessarily want that broadcast. And so the data sharing, the permissions around how a country gathers its data and then elects to share with its other partners is really important. And when we talk about the future of AI and AI models, there's going to be data that comes from those partner countries and is leveraged by AI models that are potentially outside of that country. It needs a network that is trusted to be able to share that information among those partner countries at the appropriate levels. And so those are some of the challenges that we see going forward. But it's ultimately where that commercial cloud is going to validate its utility, and the investments that have been made to ensure that it's certified for that use will certainly pay off. And
you just hit on the sort of mandate for security and interoperability, but let's now shift to the fun stuff in AI, and the potential of it is going to change the warfighter and the sort of warfare domain forever in ways we are only beginning to understand. All of that is going to take a tremendous amount of compute as well. So how do you feel Google Cloud is well positioned to help DoD and partners leverage the potential of AI?
Yeah, I think, I was at the Naval Academy yesterday. We were talking about the future of AI and how they should be looking at it, and especially when you think about the Indo-PACOM AOR. You go back and look at War Plan Orange. War Plan Orange was the war plan that we used to basically fight the Japanese. We had to send 500,000 barrels of oil into the AOR every day to keep the warfighting machine running. When you think about the ships, the airplanes, et cetera, supply chain logistics, were absolutely fundamental to winning the war in the Pacific. Anybody who says otherwise is just is uninformed. So any war in the Pacific is going to require robust logistics, supply chain logistics. I would say the services are looking at the contested logistics requirements. We were talking, Secretary Maynard was talking about the replicator effort from DASD Hicks, right? That's going to require 3D manufacturing at the edge, right? So we've been talking with companies about how you stream that data to those 3D printers to enable, you can send your bulk material that could be used to make a bunch of different things. Instead of sending an airplane that has a bunch of washers on it, right? And you've got to send another airplane that has a bunch of wrenches and hammers on it, right? You send the raw materials to the edge, you manufacture it at the edge. Now all you need to worry about is your final mile logistics. You're going to need potentially some AI to ensure that the cybersecurity of that endpoint is going to be really important. So to ensure that you don't have sabotage and that you don't have IP threat or IP theft. And your OEMs are only going to allow you to do that edge compute if you can do those two things, right? Because from a quality assurance standpoint and from a IP theft, they're going to be incredibly interested in that. I think Google has a phenomenal track record of performance in the private sector with supply chain and logistics companies, helping them optimize their operations and become more efficient. I think those lessons learned from the private sector are going to be directly applicable to the DoD in ways that we haven't fully appreciated yet. The modeling and simulation piece is also incredibly important. So we look at Google X supporting the National Guard address the wildfires in Lahaina, for example. How much damage was there? What was the magnitude of that catastrophic fire? How much is it going to cost to rebuild? How much is it going to, how many, think of it from an execution standpoint. How many dump trucks do I need? How many backhaul, front loaders do I need? How many people do I need? What was the total cost? And what is it going to take to build it back again? So that's one piece, right? Just being able to understand the wind, weather, and waves that are going to affect the operating environment in which the DoD is operating. The other piece, we're looking at AI for, corrosion control on ships, right? We're able to, again, I was talking to the Naval Academy about this yesterday. There's a guy in the Navy, his name is Rusty. He's called Rusty because he's the rust expert, right? There's 5 different kinds of rust. I didn't know there were 5 different kinds of rust. No, you probably didn't either. There are 5 different kinds of rust. And you've got to be able to identify and categorize that rust so that you know how to fix it, right? Do you chip it? Do I, et cetera. So Rusty, what you really want to do is to take Rusty's brain, his institutional knowledge of rust, the material condition of Navy ships, and you want to capture that in an AI algorithm. Now you take drones, and instead of sending people aloft to find the rust on your ship, you send drones up, and they can scan that ship in a couple of hours instead of the couple of months that it takes for humans to do it. You remove the physical, the physical risk of people falling or hurting themselves, getting injured, climbing around the superstructure, and you can apply AI to understand the material condition of your ship. Now you can send that ship to, say it's leaving from San Diego and it decides, you're going to send it to a port of call in Hawaii. You scan that ship again, take those images, send it back, tighten up your AI model. It goes to Yokosuka, Japan. You take another scan, tighten up that model. Right? Eventually, you're going to be able to predict what the material condition of your ship is with a level of accuracy that allows you to then push that back to the shipyard, and now you can start talking about shipyard optimization. And now you're going to be making that more efficient and reducing the overall cost of your ship maintenance. I think those are the kinds of promising things that we're working on that are ultimately going to help the Department of Defense from a personnel readiness, a material readiness, and installation readiness, to be more resilient from a supply chain perspective, to be more resilient from their power projection platforms at their installations, and ultimately make them more successful and better stewards of taxpayer dollars.
Well, Kevin, I think we know who Patrick Tucker's next expose is. So if you want to get him in touch with Rusty, I think Defense One would love to cover that. I know we wanted to talk about space and other things today, but thank you. We're out of time. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you to Google Cloud for making events like this possible. We appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.